US President Donald Trump has also been speaking to leaders in the region about this crisis. He talked separately to representatives from Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi and Qatar to voice his concerns, saying that unity was needed in the Gulf region to defeat terrorism. Well, for more on this story, I'm joined from London by Andreas Krieg, who's an assistant professor of defence studies at King's College in London. Professor Krieg, thank you for being with us. A lot of the demands on this list are security-related from Qatar, handing over individuals wanted for terrorism, closing military bases in Turkey. How likely is it that Qatar is going to act on those demands?
Good morning. I think it's very unlikely that Qatar can act on this because it does interfere with the sovereignty of Qatar as a state. I mean, there are certain individuals that have resided, some of them in Qatar for a long time, some of them are Qatari. Qatar will obviously comply and on those individuals that are on the UN-sanctioned or US-sanctioned list. This is a range of maybe 12 individuals that have had links, but they're already under house arrest. Some of them are jailed. Their assets have been frozen, and the countries have taken action when asked to do so by the Americans. The list that the UAE and Saudi Arabia have come up with comprise a huge list, a huge range of different individuals that have actually no real feasible connection to terrorism. So there's no evidence that these individuals ever had anything to do with terrorism, but it has more something to do with how the UAE and Saudi Arabia consider or what they consider to be terrorism, how they define terrorism. Pretty much any group in the Middle East that is agreeing to their own foreign and security policy. And I think that's the issue. They have basically put anybody on that list that says something that is against what the UAE and Saudi Arabia consider to be in line with their policy. And I think that is problematic, and obviously Qatar will not respond to that.
OK, we have a little bit of interference on the line, but we're going to press on with Andreas Krieg from King's College in London. How much is this dispute really about Qatar at all, or is this just a proxy for those neighbouring countries to, for example, target Iran?
I don't think it's about Iran. I think it's a clash of narratives. It's about these two countries, UAE and Saudi Arabia in particular, have a completely different world view about how the Middle East is supposed to look like. They believe in an authoritarian Middle East, which is run by dictatorships, which clamps down on the individual rights of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and so on. Qatar is one that has supported throughout the Arab Spring groups that responded to this, that tackled this authoritarianism, that was moving in the direction of actually freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and pluralism, inclusive governance. And that is a threat to Saudi Arabia, but it's also a threat to the UAE. And that's why they're moving against Qatar. It's very much politically motivated. It has really very little to do with Iran. If you consider the fact that what is happening at the moment, basically, is pushing Qatar to move closer towards Iran rather than doing the opposite. Because what would be needed if you wanted to take on Iran's involvement in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon or Iraq, is a unified Sunni alliance, a unified GCC that has a coherent strategy against Iran, and that is not the case. Every single country has their own policy. Qatar has never had any particular relationship with Qatar beyond very good trade relations. There weren't any political relations there. So it doesn't really make any sense, considering particularly that the UAE, who are one of the main drivers of these sanctions, have a very special relationship with Iran. The trade volume is tenfold and even more in comparison to Qatar with Iran. So Dubai is one of the major trading hubs for Iranians in the region. So it doesn't really make sense. I think it has all to do with political interest. It's about bullying and basically silencing one of the more progressive countries in the region, and that is Qatar. And I think the next move would have been silencing Oman, silencing Kuwait, because what they want to achieve, especially Saudi Arabia, is a united Middle East under Saudi leadership, which believes in authoritarian stability, which is obviously a myth, and moves against all those groups that are tackling this.
OK, Andreas Krieg from King's College in London, thank you very much for joining us there.